Sandeepa Bhatt is a professor of law and the director of Center for Aviation and Space Law at National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata. He has experience of researching on 5 major research projects which are sponsored by national and international bodies such as the World Bank, ISRO, West Bengal Judicial Academy, Ministry of Justice, and Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. He has the distinction of being a member of the International Institute of Space Law, Paris, and he's written multiple books and articles in different reputed national and international journals. He's also presented over 90 conference papers in different national and international conferences. Professor Sandeepa Bhatt has also a distinction of being a member of the Indian Space Research Organization's Expert Advisory Group for drafting the National Space Act for India. I welcome you, sir, to this conference, and I request you to please address the participants here.
Distinguished dignitaries, friends, my colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning to all of you, as well as good afternoon and good evening, depending on whatever time zone from where you are watching this event live. I think in these 2 days of the conference, all of us would be learning a lot out of the experiences of the best the trade law experts whom we are having in this particular conference. I believe everyone agree with me that I probably in the Indian academia, we might not be able to get a better conference than this on the international trade law, especially with the scholars like Professor Rajbala, Professor Peter von Bosch, or maybe Professor David Gantz, and then Bashar, and so on and so forth. So we have a panel of experts who have spoken on different areas and also going to speak on different areas in the session after this as well. Let me just actually highlight on the current challenges to the WTO in navigating the global crisis, because probably currently the most significant aspect at the WTO or international trade level has been how to overcome this current pandemic situation and how to overcome the challenges, whatever has been posed by the pandemic situation. You might find some kind of an overlap with the first session because some of the aspects which I was supposed to cover has already been hijacked in the first session. So something has been discussed. Maybe I may go a little beyond that and try to point out certain major issues in terms of dealing with the global pandemic at the WTO level. As all of us are aware of, liberalization of the trade has been a Herculean task. It has been a task, of course, I should not say accomplished completely. It is still unaccomplished. It is going on. But at the same point of time, we can find the negotiation of almost a century for the liberalization of international trade. Initially, the GATT as one of the most significant multilateral instrument, and then subsequently the WTO agreements, the different agreements, whatever have come into existence in 1994, all of them together have tried to liberalize the trade phenomenally at the global level. We can see that the states have agreed for a limited compromise of sovereignty, because of course the trade policy or maybe say imposition of the tariff or non-tariff barriers, all these different kind of things are the prerogative of the states. They have to decide on their own policies. But the states have agreed for a limited compromise, especially the trade liberalization is advantageous to everyone. It's a win-win situation. So therefore, they have agreed to limit their sovereignty to a certain extent for the purpose of going for the trade liberalization. They have also accepted several fundamental principles, which all of us know in terms of the non-discrimination, like MFN treatment or maybe national treatment, or in terms of the tariff reduction, they have undertaken the commitments. There is also actually market access commitment, which have been undertaken, plus also the transparency requirements as the fundamental principles, both under the GATT and the WTO regime. What is most significant out of all these commitments is that the enforcement mechanism of the WTO is something which gives the credibility to the entire WTO system. I should say that without the enforcement, the entire WTO system is almost useless. We need to have a very, very strong enforcement mechanism. The dispute settlement understanding, as has been discussed in the previous session as well, has been the one which has provided not only the mechanism for the settlement of disputes, but also provided the means for the purpose of enforcement of the decisions given by the WTO panel as well as the appellate body. So therefore, the sanctum sanctorum of the entire WTO regime at present seems to be the WTO dispute settlement body. We need an effective enforcement mechanism, which would basically help in terms of having the WTO commitments practically realized. Despite all these things, despite the commitments of the states, despite the limited compromise of sovereignty, and also having a WTO dispute settlement mechanism, we should keep in mind that always economics and politics still play a key role in terms of the international trade. Every country, somewhere in the corner of its mind, would like to protect its domestic industry. It would like to protect its domestic industry, which may counter the international trade. At the same point of time, they are also not in a position to go for the trade liberalization with the countries with whom they are not having the good political relationship. So therefore, economics and politics still play a pivotal role, despite actually the taking up commitments for the trade liberalization, which we need to keep in mind always in terms of our discussion, whatever we are going to have in the in another next 10 to 15 minutes. If I have to explain about the current scenario, as all of us are aware of, the COVID-19 has created a kind of a havoc to the international trading system. There has been a heavy impact, of course, even though it is not to the extent of as predicted, because prediction was more than 6% of the GDP. But as Professor Peter von Bosch has pointed out in the yesterday's session, it is 3.8% of the global GDP which has been affected out of the pandemic. But 3.8% is a huge number. If I have to relate it in terms of actually the say currency, probably it should run into a few $1 trillion. It's the global trade, or maybe actually 3.8% of the global GDP. So it would run into several $1 trillion. So that's the kind of an impact which we had out of the COVID-19 regarding the international trade. And this impact is also not uniform throughout the world. So therefore, actually, there are certain economies which are very, very hard hit out of the COVID-19, certain maybe to a moderate level. So precisely because of that reason, we should also take into consideration this equation in terms of assessing the effect of the global pandemic on the international trading system. In the wake of the pandemic, there have been several restrictions which have already been imposed. Trade restrictions have already come in. Direct restrictions, if you look into that, there is already a listing of 285 restrictions in the WTO website. If you go to the WTO website, you can find 285 restrictions. But apart from that, there are many others which are not notified to the WTO, and maybe a few thousands of restrictions which might have an indirect effect on international trade, like the restrictions in terms of transportation, restrictions in terms of actually social distancing, and maybe other things. They would all have different kind of indirect effect on the production as well as international trade. So precisely because of that reason, we have a long list of restrictions which have come up. Of course, many of them may be in the field of medical equipments, or maybe masks, or sanitizers, so on and so forth. But at the same point of time, the restrictions are also coming up in other sectors. If you look into the India-China relations, also actually many restrictions have come up during the COVID-19. I find that this scenario is similar to that of what we have evidenced during late 1920s and in 1930s. That is the situation of Great Depression. Probably we are revisiting the history, right? If you look into the situation during the Great Depression, almost all the states at the global level have restricted both exports as well as imports. They've restricted the imports primarily because of the reason that more and more importation would mean outward movement of the economy. They have to pay more and more for the imports. So consequently, there would be a further economic crisis in the country. They restricted the imports by virtue of that. Similarly, on exportation, they have imposed a restriction because most of the countries were producing in a very, very limited way, and many of them were essential commodities. If at all the exportation was allowed without any kind of a restriction, almost every producer would have gone for exportation to the other countries wherever they would have got the better prices. So consumers would be, maybe they might not even get actually essential commodities. So precisely because of that reason, restrictions were imposed on both importation as well as exportation during the Great Depression. But again, despite the fact that I find certain similarities between these two period of time, I find the differences as well. The difference in the sense, during the Great Depression, there was no such multilateral commitment like WTO or the GATT, which has been undertaken by the states. Of course, bilateral and plurilateral agreements might have been there, but not the multilateral commitments like the GATT WTO. That is why, at that time, there was no question of circumventing any GATT WTO obligation. But presently, whenever the trade restriction is going to be imposed, that would violate one or other provision of the GATT WTO. So the economic protection or maybe the protection of the domestic industry by the states in whatever mechanism it may be. Say, for example, if I have to quote the Indian example, the so-called policy of Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, right? It might have an effect in terms of our WTO commitments. I'm not saying that it is directly countering the WTO obligation in any manner. It is just a policy objective, but still it might have an effect in terms of certain commitments which India has undertaken under the WTO. So therefore, there are methods or maybe there are actually plans for the purpose of circumventing the WTO commitments in the zeal to protect their economy as well as to protect the domestic industry. How can these be justified? Maybe I should point out three major things which the states might invoke quite often in terms of justifying their trade protectionist policies. First is maybe the BOP measures, the balance of payment restrictions, maybe under Article 12 or Article 18 of the GATT or even Article 12 of the GATS, right? So the balance of payment restrictions in terms of any kind of a exigency might be taken up by the states for the purpose of restricting the international trade. Second is the trade remedy actions. Maybe we may see in the future more and more anti-dumping duties or more and more safeguard measures. There might also be possibility of actually the more and more safeguard measures, or even to a certain extent the countervailing duties to counteract the effect of subsidies as well. So second aspect which they might try to justify is under the trade remedy actions in the GATT WTO regime. Third and the most important aspect which the states might quite often resort to for the purpose of justifying their trade restriction would be the general exceptions under Article 20 of the GATT and security exceptions under the Article 21. Of course, even under the GATS also, we have Article 14 and Article 14 bis speaking about the general exceptions and security exceptions. They might quite often be invoked by the state for the purpose of justifying their international trade restrictions. If I have to elaborate slightly on this, Article 20 of the GATT, which speaks about the general exceptions, of course, it has got 10 itemized exceptions within its umbrella. Without any arbitrary or unjustifiable discrimination or disguised restriction in the international trade, the states can take certain measures which are mentioned therein under Article 20. Out of that, the two important provisions are Article 20B and Article 20J. In the present context, 20B and 20J may quite often be invoked because 20B speaks about a measure necessary to protect the human, animal, plant life or health. So in terms of COVID-19, the different restrictions, whatever has come up with respect to the medical equipment, sanitizers, or maybe different other things, they might all be justified under Article 20B. Similarly, other restrictions, maybe in terms of movement, maybe in terms of actually the social distancing, all these things also, if at all they're having any impact on the international trade, they might also be tried to be justified under Article 20B. Article 20J speaks about a measure essential for the acquisition or distribution of products which are in general or local short supply. This might also be another major provision, especially because during the pandemic, the production would have gone down. And for the purpose of actually ensuring that there would be distribution of adequate amount of the essential commodities which are in general or local short supply, the states might resort to Article 20J and impose certain trade restrictions. So Article 20B and 20J might be invoked more often in the near future. Article 21 speaks about the security exception, which says nothing in this agreement shall be construed, especially I am referring to Article 21B3. It says that nothing in this agreement shall be construed to prevent any contracting party from taking any action which it considers necessary for the protection of its essential security interests taken in time of war or other emergency in international relations. if you carefully look into Article 21, especially Clause B, provides a lot of discretion to the states in terms of invoking Article 21B. It says states can take measures which it considers necessary for the protection of its essential security interest. So the concerned state itself, whatever is imposing the restriction, what it considers necessary is something important under Article 21B. And more importantly, till very recently, until the Russia traffic in transit case has been heard by the WTO panel, it was presumed as if Article 21 is a self-judging provision. Even the WTO panel or appellate body cannot penetrate into that. That was a kind of a presumption which was existing earlier. Of course, the panel in the Russia traffic in transit case rebutted this presumption, and it said that WTO panel has got the jurisdiction to look into Article 21 justification. And this has also been carried forward in the Saudi Arabia IPR the case as well. So the panel has also looked into actually the security exception and justifiability of that in the context of the TRIPS in the Saudi Arabia case. So that's why Article 21, we cannot say it as a completely self-judging provision, but still it has got enough discretion within the ambit of Article 21 for the purpose of allowing the states to resort to restriction for security reasons. And if I were to specifically mention about B3, other emergency in international relations would be very relevant. Even though if you word the clause, if you look into the clause, it says taken in time of war or other emergency in the international relations. More particularly, it shows about a kind of a political emergency. We see that this has been also been broadly interpreted for the purpose of including even economic emergencies to a certain extent. And even if you look into the WTO website about already notified the restrictions, you can find that this restriction, whatever restriction which they have imposed, would continue until the COVID-19 emergency continues. That's what they have mentioned in the listed restrictions also. So therefore, in a way, they have not strictly adhered to other emergency in international relations. The so-called political factor has been deviated, and we can find that maybe the health factor or the economic factor has also been brought in within the ambit of this. So that's why 21 might also be quite heavily invoked by the states in the course of time. Now, all these things make it very clear that in the future, we are going to have more and more disputes about the international trade. There would be arguments and counter-arguments in terms of actually the restrictions, whatever are imposed on the international trade. And in the wake of that, what is very, very significant is the dispute settlement mechanism. We need a very, very strong dispute settlement mechanism. Of course, if you look into the development, it has been hailed as a kind of a jewel in the crown over the period of time because it has been the most successful mechanism in the international level to settle the dispute. You can't find any other major forum in the international level settling more disputes than the WTO dispute settlement bodies. So that has been very, very, very successful. But unfortunately, the trade war initially between the US and the European community and subsequently US and China, and plus the US argument against actually the functioning of the appellate body, as has been pointed out by one of my own students in the previous session. Utkarsh has basically analyzed this WTO appellate body's crisis. I will not revisit into that. Yes, so there is a current crisis in the WTO appellate body, and from 10th December 2019, it is not functioning. In fact, if you look into the functioning of the dispute settlement mechanism, it is the appellate body which has been very much instrumental in terms of bringing a kind of a credibility to the entire WTO system. It has corrected many mistakes, whatever has been committed by the panel over the period of time. So therefore, it's very important that we need to have a functioning appellate body. Meantime, a multi-party interim appeal arbitration agreement has also been signed by some of the states, but I'm not very sure how far it's going to be successful. US has already said that it is not going to join it. Many other countries are also not part of this. So therefore, there are serious doubts about the success of the multi-party interim appeal arbitration agreement. Now, in the current scenario, there is a possibility of the states losing faith in the entire WTO mechanism in the absence of a strong appellate body. This might either it might result in more and more disputes being settled at the plurilateral level, maybe by actually the FTA dispute settlement mechanisms, But more often, there might be a possibility that instead of going to the dispute settlement mechanism, the parties might go for the retaliatory measures. If one state comes out with a restriction, other state might retaliate with the similar kind of restriction. So we might end up in a vicious circle of retaliatory measures between the different countries, which would completely wither away the WTO commitment. So we need to revive the WTO DSM as soon as possible. In my concluding remarks, I believe that there is a possibility of some unprecedented developments at the WTO level. States are trying to invent some new mechanisms for the purpose of protecting their domestic industry and also to come out of this economic crisis, whatever is basically being faced at present. And there are also threats for the withdrawal from the WTO. We know that already the United States has already threatened to withdraw. I don't know what the Biden administration is going to do with respect to that. Previous administration was very clear in terms of withdrawing from the WTO. And if United States is going to withdraw, I'm pretty sure there are many other countries which are going to follow this. So therefore, there is every possibility of WTO losing credibility by the withdrawal of the membership. There is also increasing trade wars. Maybe in the post-pandemic situation, there will be much more, which is also a kind of a major problem which might have to be faced by the WTO. So I believe at the end that this is a precarious situation which the WTO is undergoing at present. So moot question is whether the WTO can overcome this and sustain as it was earlier for the purpose of facilitating the international trade. Probably the future has to tell us about this. Thank you so much.